Hey, so in this video, I'm gonna tell you my experience of my fourth Vipassana retreat and why, in spite of three times having experienced this before, two times sitting and one time serving, I wasn't able to finish my fourth Vipassana course. This is only for old students. If you're a new student, if you've never done Vipassana before, especially at dhamma.org, according to SN Goenkaji's method, please don't watch this video. But if you're an old student who has completed one of their courses, you can watch this video. So I'm going to tell you what happened, how am I feeling after this, will I continue Vipassana, and do I recommend it to Vipassana still, right? Let's find out. So a little recap of where I'm coming from. If you have been part of the channel, you might have seen my previous video about my third time releasing massive fear in Vipassana. It was a very interesting experience. I was doing serving for the first time, which is a lot intense because you get to speak with other servers and just work, but you still get to meditate minimum 3 hours a day. And I pushed it, right? Like, I think I participated in the group sittings. In the afternoon we had some free time, so I would participate in that. Sometimes, rarely, I wake up in the morning and go there, maybe once or twice. So I averaged to around 3 to 5 hours a day, I think. So it's a follow-up of that, right? So in that thing, something big, massive happened. A lot of fear. For the first time, I think I released fear. And it once I came out of it, I lost my motivation to do some things. I didn't lose my motivation to anything. I was not depressed. I still had motivations, but it was a lot different to how I lived my life before, especially when it comes to making money and doing things. I had this attitude of, why are we, I remember getting out and I was like, why am I complicating life? To be happy, all I need is this, and money was not a part of it. It was very different, and I didn't know what to do. And following one full year, I tried some things. It felt like a lot of things kept failing. I remember I was bitter. I was mostly angry, resentful. And finally, my ego broke just before this fourth time Vipassana. I was like, okay, you know what? A lot of things I thought I would never do, I went back to doing. Basically, it was my ego. For example, if I took pride in saying that I would never work a 9 to 5 job again, because I was successful in freelancing for a while, this year, all of that broke because I was not able to focus or even know or have clarity. At some point, I was just like, oh, this can't continue forever. And I just started to go back and apply for jobs, and which I didn't get a lot of responses. That's a different story. But that's the state at which I was in before getting into the fourth Vipassana. A few more things you should know is that when it comes to my marriage, of course I know this now, but back then I didn't know what was wrong. For example, I know my wife is a loving, wonderful person. I wanted to stay with her, but there were things that I couldn't express in words that was just bothering me. And of course I know it now. I'm going to reveal it later, but I'm just trying to recollect my memory of how it felt. I would try to justify my frustration or anger or sort of dissatisfaction generally with, and I would try to do many things, and still I would never be happy or peaceful. That's the word, I think. Not just happy. I think we had a lot of happy moments. We took holidays and things will go wonderfully, but on a day-to-day basis, because I would tell myself that because I was not very successful with my work, maybe because I'm sitting at home and managing stuff. We have an Airbnb that I manage. So we're not poor by any means. You can see we have a big house, we have a I'm happy when it comes to that, but just a general dissatisfaction. That's a state: frustration, dissatisfaction, anger, and things like that. Often I thought the anger just came from because I was practicing what's called nofap, right? I'm married, but even somebody in ancient scriptures, it's a Tamil scripture, somebody I heard say that, if you lose your sperm, you become weak and you die. So, and I thought, I've started practicing this since a long time, and I've seen that it keeps something alive in me, right? And so even if we have sex, I wouldn't really lose it, right? And but that doesn't mean I'll go on for like that forever. So nowadays, I think the general advice that works for me is, you lose your sperm once in 2 weeks, right? That's your thing. Just like one thing. Even if you don't do that, naturally for men, if you hold on to your sperm for a long time, you are going to have a release on your own while you're sleeping, or yeah, while you're sleeping. Basically, there's no other time it's going to happen. You might have some dirty dreams and then it goes away. All right, so this is just to give a context, right? Why the reason I spoke was that because I often thought, okay, it's because of nofap. I've heard people say that all your insecurities come up, many things come up, but I just didn't know how to deal with it. I did enjoy everything that came with the extra fear, right? Not fear, feariness. Um, I was not able to go back. Basically, like I was not like, okay, let me go back to having more sex, or having, of course, sex was not a problem, but losing it more times. Uh, that was not an option, because I genuinely, after a while, I think it's been a few years, I've been practicing this on and off. What happens is, over a long time, you start to enjoy your state of holding to your sperm, because it's, as many people have spoken before me, it's the life force, right? It has the force of creating life. So why not would you learn to use it for yourself? And I think right now I just enjoy holding it. Okay, moving forward. Daily practice. So I'm just going to give you a sequential thing of what happened. The day one, I remember, was very frustrating, because in spite of it being able to make, I would consider on and off, if I meditate at home, i would I would have high awareness, high level of sensitivity. I can focus on my breath here, and it was pretty good. Like, we judge ourselves, and again, that's a wrong thing to do. We'll talk about it later. But I went there and I was like, I'm trying to go through the stages and I'm not able to be equanimous. And even if I stay equanimous, things were not progressing or happening as I experienced before. And this was bizarre for me. Like, it was like something was broken. And I had this feeling of what's broken, right? Sort of, that's the feeling I have. And for some reason, on day two, I just saw that nobody had written or applied for the interview with the teacher, so I applied it. And I went over and I said, all right, I just talked about something. And then the teacher actually asked me back, is everything okay? And the moment he asked me back, I just sort of lost it. And it was sort of like a therapy session, but very, very short, right? Because the teacher is not there to philosophize and talk about many things, basically just making sure, okay. And the first word that came out of my mouth was, I just really don't know if I'm doing enough, or I never know how much to do, right? Something like that. And then the teacher said, don't worry about it. And he called me disciplined. Like, I think my self-image of myself was that I was never, I wouldn't say never disciplined, but maybe before this Vipassana, I was thinking like that. And I never considered myself disciplined. I would always consider myself who lets go of things halfway, but I never know how much to try, right? Like, you can't try something that fails. Nobody in life is going to teach you how much to try something. That's just not possible. So if you're going to start a business, for example, how long are you going to try, right? Like, are you going to try 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? Are you going to be like, I never give up and just keep going? At what point are you doing enough, right? Something like that. And then that was the first release I had. I cried, and I came to home, and I came to my room, and I was lying down, and I started to cry, and I felt like, okay, that was sort of like my first, for the lack of other word, it's sankara, right? I mean, I hope that's a sankara, because obviously with every vipassana I realized that what I know before was completely wrong, or there's just more and more things to discover. But for the sake of this, I think that was the first sankara I released, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. That's something I held on. That's something that bothered me all my life, and then I just kept moving on. And then uh, a while later, I think day 3, day 4, at some point, I started to feel pain. And obviously, I've been through this process before, where pain or certain sensations are mapped to certain emotions, right? So sort of like how anger feels like, for example, right? Because in my second vipassana I released massive anger, of something that happened in my childhood, of when I was just like generated so much anger within me because I was not ready to be okay with what I was going through. So similarly, this time there was pain, but now I realize it was slightly different, and I'm basically pushing through it. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to force things to happen, which is another form of craving. But obviously, it's all so fuzzy and so blurry. So uh, it was like this whole course was on steroids, right? Like it after day 2, I got into deep samadhi, which is like I was able to um, have deep samadhi here. And of course, from day 2 to day 4, we won't have Vipassana. On the day 4, Vipassana is given to new students. So they told us as old students, all you have to do is be aware of your subtlest breath here. That's it, nothing else. And I think even while doing that, I would go to deep samadhis really, really fast. And when I went to deep samadhi, it was almost like doing Vipassana, because a lot of my body sensations that I was not able to feel before, I would feel instantly, right? And that's when, in the beginning, I used to think that when you have your body sensations, it was like a magic, right? Like I never got the concept that it's always there. And it took me fourth time of Vipassana to actually understand reality, which is that these body sensations are always there, which is something that Goenka ji says. But I guess you're not going to experience something intellectually, right? You have to experience something yourself. And it's so interesting that it took me so long to understand that, yes, when you go into deep samadhi, what you feel, the pain you feel, is not pain that is created. It's not pain that's physical. Of course, I'm not saying physical pain doesn't exist, but that's like a really small part. The pain, the massive pain that actually comes up, is actually something that manifests because of the deep sankara, something that you touch so deep that it's coming out, right? And it comes out as the teacher actually confirmed. He said it comes out as feelings or bodily sensations, or both. For me, it's often both. So it comes as bodily sensations first. So I have massive pain here, there. And something else I found out very interesting was that before I used to think, wow, like, okay, maybe the issues or the sankara that I generated in my childhood, or whatever I have, hold it within me, it's like mapped to different parts of the body. But no, it's so fluid. Depending on your posture, you will completely change, right? You would just be like, if you sit in a different way, the pain will manifest in a different place. And I thought that was very interesting. Even based on, I can sit straight, I can sit, even when sometimes when I'm not sitting straight, I could feel it manifesting in a different part. So going forward to day 4, I remember I had one of the biggest releases, which is my hurt. So I've never released hurt before in my life, right? I never had this expression of how to release hurt. Like, I was hurt before many times in many situations, but I was holding on to it my whole life. I'm 35 now, and I got hurt in a big way when I was 20 years old, 21 years old, by my first girlfriend. And I wouldn't say she hurt me, because that's just like blaming her, but ultimately she is a hurt soul, hurt person as well. So when we are hurt, we go out and we inevitably start hurting others. So I realized that, and she actually cheated on me, and it's my first love. And obviously, my side of the story is that, wow, I'm even though I'm not completely 100%, nobody's completely 100%, so this is just completely my side of the story. So I felt like I was so good, I was so innocent. All I wanted was this first true love, and it's just unfair that I gave her my heart and she broke it, right? By cheating on me. So that was like the first big hurt, right? And then I remember on the night when she revealed this information, which was basically that in the last 2 years, on and off, sometimes I used to have sex with my ex-boyfriend, sort of thing. And that night, I remember, I couldn't cry. I wanted to cry. I just didn't have the emotional capability to express hurt. It's not that I never cried. I had, like, maybe I pushed it out later over the next 2 months, 3 months, but I had no idea how to speak it out, how to talk about it, how to, even if I talk about it, how to cry and let out my emotions and all of that. Maybe I judged myself. So when it came out, it was very interesting. Every time I express something, or the Sankara comes out in Vipassana, I hear my thoughts so loud that it feels like, I almost, when I think back, it's like I am screaming, but in my head, and I can hear my voice. And this time it was like, honey, she hurt me, right? Like, of course, even more intense, but I'm not able to emote like that, because I was like, just like, somebody was really hurt. I was just like, honey, she hurt me, right? And basically, I am telling my wife that she hurt me, right? Which is my first girlfriend. And as soon as I do that, I cry so much, and I cry my eyes out, and I'm like, wow, okay. But then it doesn't stop there, right? Usually in my past Vipassana experiences, sometimes what happens is one thing comes out and that's it. And then I feel amazing. And like, this time it didn't stop. It was like, it felt a little bit good, but then it started to build up many things. And then I had guilt, because inevitably over the last 2 years, not all the time, but I can feel like how much of that hurt I was holding, I was trying to inflict on my wife, right? So, and in spite of everything that she gave me is just love, right? I remember in Vipassana, I was thinking, wow, I must have like amazingly good karma from the past, right? That I was able to get her as my wife. And like, I didn't even understand, how can somebody so hurt be with somebody like that, who's just like almost, it feels like unconditionally loving. But I think half of a part of it has to do with the fact that I met her immediately after my first Vipassana. So I was in a different state in life also. Even though I was not healed of this hurt, it was probably deeply under, I don't know, it was not on the surface, I guess. And of course, the first few years of the relationship, these things never came up, this hurt never came up. And it's only after we got married that this hurt started to come to the surface. And it was very interesting how it happened, and it causes a lot of problems. And also, I had all these realizations about, I don't know if unless you've been living under a rock, Maybe you have heard of Andrew Tate. He's a very controversial figure. Or anybody. Generally, there is a big set of videos online about manosphere, it's called, right? Like men's rights and men's liberation and what it takes to be a man and save the men sort of things and let men be men. And it's basically going against, in some ways, against mainstream feminism. And I had this realization about how all of these things that appealed to me started to happen only after I was 20, at that time when I got hurt. And it's that hurt, it's the expression of that hurt, and that now this whole bro culture, and how uh, they're not misogynistic, but in a way they have a small resentment against, not even resentment, it's a mix of resentment, hurt. And when you're hurt, you're gonna not trust women fully. In my case, I didn't completely trust my wife. I can't even explain in words in what fashion. Anyway, so this is my this is all my personal history. I guess I spoke about it enough. So after this, I had guilt come out. So I was like, okay, I apologized to her. But a lot of other hurt came out as well. Like, for example, I was hurt when somebody disappointed me. I was hurt when somebody cheated. When I say cheated, when you're really young, when somebody promises you something and they don't do it, you are hurt, right? All of these things, I was just like holding on to it. A lot of hurt. Something even related to my mother. It was just so random, but it was, I don't, now that I think about it, I don't even remember when all of these things happened. And another interesting thing is that I kept keeping score in some way. I was like, okay, the first time Vipassana was like that, which is another story. Maybe I'll link to it. I have not made a video about it. And then second time was multiple times more effective in my own terms, because I measured it as, okay, first time I released one Sankara, second time I had multiple Sankara releases. And this time I was like, okay, every day I need to make sure. It was like going to the gym and be like, yeah, I gotta put in the thing and I gotta do this, right? And after a certain point, what happened was that Sankara stopped coming out. I didn't feel like I was in control. Until then, I had this illusion of I'm in control, right? Because I'm doing this thing, which is following the instructions. And when I follow these instructions, things happen. And I was like, yes, I mastered this. This is amazing. Keep going forward. And then I remember, I think it was half of day 4 or starting of day 5. I don't remember, because on day 4, I definitely remember having a lot of releases. But on day 5, I was having fear for the first time. And I didn't know what to do with it. Because of that, the fear is something that I'm not very good at dealing. I realized I have dealt with shame, anger, hurt, feeling like something is wrong with me, insecurities. What else was there? There was something where, again, fear started releasing in the third Vipassana, which is the other video that I talked about. But even that, it completely shook me off guard. And in the past, I've had anxiety and panic attacks, right? It's one of the main things that started to transform my life, which when it hit me, I was like, oh my God, I started to question everything about myself, the world, because things, or the society, or all the ideas that I had about what I thought I knew about life and structures and organizations and peoples and science and everything, it all broke. And I started to really truly question things, I think. So when the fear started, I was not able to handle it. So I go to the teacher and I'm like, okay, I feel afraid, right? And it was at night, and he immediately says, and I say, I don't know, something might happen at night. I say that. And he immediately says, okay, just take it easy. Try to sleep. You can call the assistant who serve in this course. One of them said, I leave their door open, so you can always knock at night if you really need any assistance. If you want, you can eat something at night. So he was just like, take it easy. don't do Vipassana, just do Anapana, and you can sleep long. And I was like, and he added one more thing. He said, just know that there is an option. You can leave tomorrow if you want. There's just always this option to don't worry. And I was like, for me, it was the opposite. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Why are you encouraging me to leave? Like, I thought as a teacher, you're always supposed to force or encourage you to stay and be like, hey, you know what, this is sort of the process. Because that's what happened in Bolivia, where there was this lady teacher again, assistant teacher, I think. I'm not sure. I don't think there were any teachers. And she was an assistant teacher too. And she was like, okay, she was very loving, very kind. And she said, this is part of the process, because there was a small amount of fear that got released, right? And she said, don't worry, just trust the process, go forward. But here, he didn't say that. And it was bothering me. I thought he's just trying to play safe. Maybe because I freaked out last time. Maybe he's saying that I just had my own ideas. Maybe he's just trying to protect the other students so that he can't give, I have all these things about, I'm basically not trusting him. I'm like, you're just trying to save your ass, right? Like that's exactly what I'm thinking at that time, or my mind is thinking, God knows. And I go to sleep, and the next day morning, I kind of relax. At that night, I was not able to sleep great, but I kind of relaxed the next day morning. My memory is still fuzzy whether all of this happened on fourth day night or fifth day night. So excuse me for that. And I just remember this. I come back and I just say, okay, let me follow his advice, which is, he says, don't do Vipassana. You don't have to do Adityan, which is like, you can move your body, all of that thing. And I'm just so confused. I'm like, why is he saying all these things? I don't understand. How can I do all these things? Like it doesn't make any sense to me. So what happens is, finally I follow all that in advice, and I do the complete opposite, right? I sit in group sitting. Of course I try to do Adityan, but I bend, I open my eyes when it gets hard. Basically, I relaxed myself to say, okay, I'm not like, let me just be stern and push through this, like that's what like typical men's help advice videos, soldier on bro, and all those things, like you're supposed to work hard and all of that. But here there was a teacher and was telling me all to relax, and I relaxed, and the whole magical thing happened. And just, it was like, it made me realize it was actually me craving, even though I thought I was not craving, because of I'm like watching the sensations, and I'm trying to watch my pain and watch my fear and be like, okay, I'll not react. Sometimes I mentally say, equanimous, stay equanimous, don't react. Or I'll hear Goenkaji's words. So instead, I gave it up completely. I was just like, okay, I'm not going to do anything. Just let my mind wander away. But my mind never wandered away. That's very, not never, but, wandered away much lesser. Automatically in these group sittings, it was just staying like in a meditative state, in spite of what posture I stayed. And then I opened my eyes, and even then I was able to stay anapana active. Like I was able to do the whole samadhi here using this part. And then the biggest release happened. The release was that I just want to be the best, or something similar. And it was very interesting, because I don't know. And then the second thing was, I don't know who I am if I'm not the best. And I couldn't believe how deep this was as part of my identity. And once it released, there was a lot of fear that got away. And I was questioning myself, how is this fearful, right? So the way I rationalized it is that, because I had this idea that I have to be the best, that itself is bound by fear, right? Like, I don't know who I am if I'm not the best, right? Or it means that I don't value myself if I'm not the best. So I'm always scared of not being the best. And I remember I'm even looking at the teacher like he's a competition to me. And because I'm like, you know what, yes, I'm your student, but I'm going to be better than you, and maybe I get enlightened before you, or like, so I'm taking this whole thing as so seriously. And it's linked to the same thing I told him on the day too. I don't know how much to do. It's been a part of my life's problems, where in spite of being in great positions, where I'm like so confused by, am I doing enough? I just need to know, am I being the best, right? I didn't put it in that way, but that's what was causing the problem. And then uh, I released it. I went out for the first time. I looked at everybody and they all looked different, right? Like, I saw people and I realized, wow, how much I've been judging each and every person, in spite of calling myself a person who's like, oh, I'm not a judgy person, I have to be accepting, blah blah blah. But in very subtle ways, on almost like an autopilot, um, making conclusions about others, guys, girls, everybody. And just like, but I went out and I saw all these fellow participants, and I was like, I had this moment of like, wow, you and I are the same. And I felt this sense of connectedness. I was like, whoa, okay, this is amazing. And that's when I understood how the fear worked, right? The fear will not let you connect with other people. So it was amazing. I was just like, this is awesome. Like, I just looked at people and I was like, for the first time, I could feel like I could just have conversations with anybody, and I could feel just nothing, no anxiety, no fear, like, not judging, not trying to prove, nothing. Like, we are the same, right? Like, that's the vibe I had, and it was amazing. But it was short-lived. It was amazing, and I started craving it, and the process started happen. And then what happened was the fear started to keep on going, and I didn't know what to do. So I followed the teacher's advice. I slept in much later, uh, on the fifth day night. I woke up 1 hour late, so I didn't go on 4:30. I went at 5:30 to sit. I practiced only anapana. I took it so lightly, so I was not. I would just relax when I want to, and then I would, be like, okay, let maybe. Basically, I'm trying to figure out what is this balance, right? Like, how do I know, am I relaxing too much or that, right? And then, even now, I think I realize as I talk, I still have work to do on that front, maybe, right? Because maybe it's not fully out yet. I don't know. But the lesson ultimately I found out was, life is not about torturing yourself, which is again something that Goenkaji says. Life is not about torturing yourself. Life is not a race. Life is just about living. So at least in that aspect, I'm not running towards something right now. I'm not thinking I want to get enlightened as soon as possible, but rather I feel like, okay, I'm going to take it one thing at a time. I'm just going to take life as it comes. That aspect, I feel pretty good. I think I just feel, I've never felt like this in my life. It took me 35 years to even realize this is possible. So it's cool. It's a really good feeling to be like, okay, you know what? It's okay. It's just okay. It's gonna happen. We're just gonna be here. Okay. All right. Let me move on, because it's been 33 minutes already. Next, I move on, and in spite of not doing any of this, I start having sankaras come out. Different things, multiple things. At night, when I'm afraid, I'm constantly afraid. Fear is at the top. When I'm afraid, I remember when I used to have anxiety, I felt like a crazy person, right? My thoughts were so loud in my head. Uh, it's like all the movies where I watch about how they show mentally ill people in, what do you call, in asylums and all these places, how they represent uh, crazy people or things like that. I'm sorry if I offend somebody, but I don't know. I hope you get the idea. I'm not meaning it in that sense, but you know how all the visuals and things that you saw or thought or heard or stories and all of that you thought about people, everything was like coming up, and I was like, okay, I'm losing it, sort of thing, right? Like, so I'm like completely the opposite. Okay, I'm not going to do anything. I'll just waste my time not do anything. And in spite of that, every time I go to group sitting, things were just coming up. Like it was completely out of my control. And another big thing that came out was the fear just started going up and up and up and up and up. And at some point, I couldn't even close my eyes. If I closed my eyes, the fear was through the roof. Like it was just like, of course, I'm not losing it. I'm sitting there. I still have the strength to sit there, but I have a lot of fear and anxiety. And I'm just like, okay, what more can I do? Like I can open my eyes, and in spite of that, if I sit there, I can't sit opening my eyes all the time for some reason. So I close naturally, at least to be like, okay, let me relax and sit in a comfortable posture. None of that happens, and I'm still like, it's still coming up, right? And at this time, I have all these thoughts about, okay, have I broken myself? Have I done something wrong? Did I mix multiple things? All these thoughts, and I'm like, I just need to stop. And then I realize, okay, this is crazy. I shouldn't crave anything. I should just let it. So I have these moments where I also watch the fear, where I'm like, okay, I'll just let it. But of course, I'm not able to sustain that for long. The more I watch, the bigger it gets. That also happens. Uh, Ultimately, I don't remember exactly when, on day 6 uh, morning, I think, I have my biggest fear release. But it was not a freak out like the last time. Last time, I just walked out and I started to shake and I started to cry uncontrollably. Here I cried a lot, but I was very much aware what was happening. The fear was that, first it took multiple forms for me to understand. And first fear was me being detached from my wife. Like, doesn't mean a divorce or anything, but more like not feeling connected. It was a fear that we always had. We were able to express it to each other, but we didn't know what it was, right? She had it, I had it. Maybe she was able to sense it at some level. That fear came up, and then suddenly it felt like, that's it, it's gone, right? Like I'm experiencing what it means to feel like my wife is a nobody to me. Like I don't care about her. And I envision this poor girl who has been with me, who has been probably sharing her life, and suddenly it's not fair that I just feel nothing towards her. And I'm so scared of that. And quickly it transitions from that to the next step, which is I feel like she is dead. And that's when all hell breaks loose. I cry and cry and cry. And then finally it hits me. This was the biggest fear. I've been so bound and attached to not just my wife, just the fact that my wife and I, the relationship, all those ideas, what I envision as an ideal life, all these things, right? Like, who am I? What kind of person should I be? What kind of relationship should I? All of this is connected by fear, because I'm like, I can't do that. I can't do this. I can't do that. And all these things. But finally, here I am. I'm like feeling what it feels to be when my wife is dead. It was the most painful experience, horrible experience. And I'm also going through the whole, what I think was the, what do you call, the, what do people do after people are dead, right? They redeem. It's not regret, but there's a phase that they go through. So what you understand, right? So the phase that people go through to grieving period, right? So I'm going through that too, and it's so painful because it's happening. What's probably taking people months or years of grieving takes only like a few minutes or hours. It's so intense. uh it's so intense. It's like I'm going through so many things, and then quickly transitions from that to, I realize I've never faced death. I've never faced death. My parents are okay. I'd never had somebody so close to me die. Even when my grandfather died, it was after a while, right? Like it was after I was not very connected to him, so I didn't have much attachment to him, even though I really loved him and he loved me. He did a lot of things for me. I took many things for granted, and which I think I definitely regret. I should have, but you cannot bring somebody dead back. But I'm just thankful, I guess, that my grandfather showed me whatever love he showed me, because I know many people don't even get that. So it's anyway. So the point I'm trying to make is, I never had experience of death, and that even scares me. And I'm like, oh my god, this is my first experience of death, and I'm thinking, why am I going through this, right? Like, I should be going through this only after my wife is dead. Like, why am I going through this fast? And I'm like, I have more fears about this, which is, okay, does this mean that I am? But I have this one clear understanding, which is, all the people who are enlightened or liberated, or these gurus and everybody, they are beyond this, right? They have crossed all these things, and that's, you can see it from the way they speak, from the way they define death and talk about death. I can just be like, wow, you have crossed this, right? Like, I just know that. I just don't know what happens in the future. That's the biggest fear. And then it moves to the fear of, I'm facing the fear, it's on the surface of, everybody who you love is going to die, right? And I was just like, okay, this is so painful, so painful. And at that point, I had a release. I cried my eyes out. I had a small phase of, I'm feeling better now. The fear is gone. At least what a good part of fear is gone. And at this point, I'm like, okay, I have to make a choice, right? It'll be really nice if I could just be like, okay, not meddle with fear anymore. Because I'm like, this is enough. Where is this going to go? I don't know. And I realized, even if I had the chance of enlightenment or whatever, full liberation, I was not ready to take it, because I didn't know what lied in the future at that time. I was still like, okay. And I went to the teacher and I started to cry even more. He was smiling and he said, look, but you can rationalize this. She is still alive, right? But I didn't express myself, because it's like, but what if she's alive and I'm with her, I see her, I meet her, and I'm like, but she's dead to me. You know what I mean? And I'm like, that's still a fear, or I don't know, right? So those kind of fears are still there. And I realize, ooh, okay, the more I sit in, and he asked me questions like, what are you doing? Are you doing Vipassana? I say, no. Are you being relaxed? Yes, I change. I open my eyes. I'm not even doing Aditana. That's when he says, look, you can still go. Don't you, if maybe this is your limit. He used the word again already. Maybe you approached your limit. You should take it easy. If you're not ready for this sort of, he didn't use those words, but he was like, maybe this is the limit. There's nothing wrong. He says, there's another old student who came and she left on day 3. This happens. This is not a bad thing. And I say, I just feel bad for not finishing the course. And I start crying. And he's like, nothing like that. This is not about, I think he would have screamed like, this is not about your ego of finishing this course. Like, it's not about that, right? And I had realized this now. And he was so loving and gentle, and I understood everything he talked about before. And I finally say, okay, I think it's a good idea to leave. And I'm like, okay. I go back, I quickly pack. And then finally, I feel a lot better. The moment I decide I want to leave, there was like a lift of, okay, I made my decision, because I know I don't have to face this. But I also felt like until then, things were not in my control, right? Because things were coming out. I would use the word magic, because that's what it felt like every time I entered the group sitting Aditan hall. I was like, this place is charged with something that you cannot explain or you don't understand. And it's because all these people are meditating here. There is an effect, right? I just experienced it so well in that atmosphere. And I'm like, okay, just being in that atmosphere and all the work I did before, until I think even before this Vipassana started, maybe it helped me. And in this Vipassana, I was just like progressing so fast through Samadhi and the first 3 days. And after, even during Vipassana phase, I think I remember a point where I just pushed too much, right? I was like trying to squeeze it, sort of thing, by watching my pain and just like, no, basically I would be like, I have to stay equanimous, so let the pain come up, and that's what I was doing. So beyond all this, I finally managed to get out of that place. So this is what happened. So if you're somebody who's still listening to this, I'm going to answer the other question. So this is what happened. After that, I came back. I met my wife, my dog. That night, I felt like life was a dream. Obviously, I think maybe because I didn't ease out, right? I had some conversation. I took a bus. Even in the bus, I was feeling like my anxiety was coming up. I felt anxious. I shouldn't say my anxiety. It's weird that like it's like I have anxiety or something like that. No, like I felt anxious at that point of time. And I and that's a very interesting point. Nobody should say my anxiety. And it's weird, right? Anyway, it's like you're again creating an attachment to it. Okay, let me not off track. Um, Going back, this whole experience has been at night. I was again feel like I was in the bed. My wife slept really fast because she had a long day. And I was just like, nothing makes sense anymore. None of this makes sense. And I'm like looking at my life and I'm like, okay, what? So anyway, I finally come back and I'm like, slowly over the next 2 days, I had another release where I realized life is full of miseries or something like that. And I cried and I was like, I just said, we're all going to die. We just have to leave this planet better. That's like the only thing we can do. Like nothing else will matter. The only thing you can do is for the life that's going to come after us, we have to leave it better, right? At least that's what I said yesterday. And then there is a phase of coming out of this like this state of heightened um, awareness where I talk and say and do these things. I really hope to continue. So how am I feeling after this? After this, I feel really good. Like unlike the last time where I came out and felt like, oh my god, I feel like something is left over. Why do I feel like this? There's no motivation. Unlike that, I'm like, I'm happy, I'm smiling, I'm relieved. I was not like this for a while. It's been 1 year. I was so tense. I'm actually happy. I felt laughing. My face is relaxed. I took my beard off and I was like, okay, you know what? It's fine. And whatever I've released, I think I've released forever. The urge to be the best, whatever that means. It's a losing battle. There's no best, right? Like, anyway, I'm not hurt anymore. I feel much closer to my wife. Our relationship feels great because it's almost like I'm for the first time I'm able to be happy for her, um, in spite of her being more successful in many areas than me. And I'm not like, oh, you're happy, you're like that. No, it's more like, you know what, I feel like we are just connected. So her success is my success in some ways. It's so intertwined. Like we share everything. We share a house, we talk to each other, we like it's such a the husband wife bond is such a deep bond. It feels insane or illogical to separate yourself as two different people, but that's what I was doing before. I was constantly like, this is yours, this is mine. I would say finances have to be kept separate. A lot of things. Anyway, I'll not go into revealing too many personal details, but I guess it doesn't matter. It's just to keep this short, right? So that's how I feel. I feel great. So will I continue after this? Like I said, the teacher said I should wait for 2 years and then take a course and be feeling stable. So obviously I think there's a slight bit of regret that, oh my god, I could have stayed, because I do feel the benefits of everything that happened right now. But I wouldn't have known, because at that time I had no idea that things will get better. I thought, what if like after the third time I'm gonna feel a little bit like things are left over, I don't know how to handle them. I didn't know I would feel happy and relieved and peaceful, basically. But now I get it. But I think that's part of the experience. So obviously, I plan to continue practice, and I think finally I understand actually the reality of sila, samadhi, and panya. Sila, I still don't get it, but samadhi and panya, I definitely get it. I hope in the sometime in the future I actually understand the importance of sila. So going forward, I wouldn't do anapana like it's a mechanical thing. I actually understand anapana's importance, and then why do we scan your body, and all those things. And the most important thing is that I am not going to force it in any way. That's the biggest lesson of this whole thing, which is that because, like I explained, everything was about becoming the best. I was not really living life, right? That's the big best thing that came out of it. The point of life is to be happy, and that means even when you do vipassana, you have to be equanimous and just take it easy. That's the biggest lesson. Like, it's okay that you feel like you want to change. Obviously, they don't recommend aditan in home practice, so it's okay you feel some things. It's okay you're not feeling certain sensations. It's okay you're not able to even have continuous awareness. The point is to use those experiences to develop the sense of equanimity, and that's the whole point. And the more equanimous you are, I naturally see now why, even after 3 vipassana experiences, I was not in some ways happy as certain other participants. Sometimes I see them come out and they're like so happy. It's because they learned the lesson that equanimity is everything, and it's going to help you live a happy life going forward. And I'm going to take it forward as I want in the future, slowly, one step at a time. And that's what I do. And obviously, now I understood that you would have understood the answer to, do I still recommend Vipassana? Absolutely. I think I'm going to um, pursue some things for the spread of that. It's almost like I made it a point to do something all the time to keep it reaching more people. Today morning, I spoke to somebody, and I was really surprised because I just mentioned, and he was like, "Oh, can you send me the link? I want to know." Maybe it was the right time in his life or something, but he asked. And so I was like, okay, I was happy that another person got this, and he's probably going to step into it. And so this is the end of this video. I hope you liked it. This was really long. Um, and if you like this, and if you found this useful, or if you any kind of story would you like to share, I would love to hear it in the comments. Like, if you see my third experience, you would have already seen some comments, and that makes me happy because I do feel a sense of connectivity with people all around the world commenting and saying, okay, hey, thanks for sharing this, or their own experiences or what they took out of this. I hope this reaches more of you, and I made this specifically for old students. If you're on the edge, if you were having some trouble, if you had certain things in your head, I hope this is plays a small role in helping you continue your practice. Thank you.